Hi, how are you? Welcome back to I'm so sorry about that. Welcome back to another episode of Kassick's Corner, the podcast for educators everywhere who just need a moment to exist in a space that's safe, comforting, and all the things. I have been doing this for long enough that if y'all have been watching, my intro changes every single time, but you get the vibes if you're here. So today I'm gonna really lean into that because I'm not gonna lie, I have kind of forgotten that I existed for a second here. So I walked into the store recently and I saw like all the back to school shit like already on display, and I said absolutely not, and I ran the other way because I cannot believe that it's already like that time, right? Like I was telling my therapist, I was telling my therapist that like this is the first time in a very long time that I finally like feel regulated, and it's right in time to like go back to school. And to me that's like crazy because I'm about to be all kinds of dysregulated all the damn time because of the way that like school works and stuff. So I didn't really know that it was already time to go back to school. So now that I'm sitting here and this day, and I usually record like the day before that I like release the episodes. So I'm recording on like the Tuesday before it goes out on Wednesday morning. And I literally was looking at all just stuff I was doing today, and I'll get into that. But it was like, oh shit, I have to record an episode because I'm trying to be better. And I think this is officially like the last episode I'll record until I go back to school. And that's like kind of terrifying because I can't believe it. It's only like a week away. Like teachers start for me in a week, so I'm really in just like this. It's everything's just sneaking up on me, right? So I'm going back to school next week. Today I'm gonna like do a little bit of complaining about that, catch up with what I've been doing to kind of like prepare, and kind of talking about some new ideas and like whatever comes up along the way. Because like I said, I'm less prepared than usual, and that's saying a lot. So I hope you're just here for the vibes, because that's like low key what I'm going to talk about today. So I think like the first thing that is clear, right, is like at this time of the year I'm very much trying not to think about school, because in the next week when I go back, it's going to be like all school all the time. So I'm trying really hard like not to think about it, but also recognizing that I need to be prepared, because I also know that like in a week, like I said, I'm going to be so dysregulated all the time that I really just need to be ready for all of that. And you know that like first week when they like tell you that you're going to have like all this time to work and all these different things, I never get any work done because people are always asking for meetings. And you know, as a case manager for IEPs, it's always like, oh, like can we meet to talk about this kid? Or I'm trying to like hold teachers a little bit more accountable for accommodations and stuff this year by having individual meetings, which is something I'll definitely touch on. But the idea here is that first week there's always like, here's all your work time. We have like meetings in the morning or whatever. And on the schedule, it says like we have a ton of fucking work time, and I'm so excited for it. But it doesn't seem that I can ever get anything done, because either I'm visiting with people I haven't seen in a minute, or people are in my room like having meetings, or I'm scheduling meetings, or meetings come up, or it's like, different trainings you have to do. Like I just never get anything fucking done. So the idea that I'm not thinking about school is still accurate, but I'm also trying really hard to be prepared and do those things that I know that I'm going to want to get done before I get to school, because Lord knows I'm not going to have any time to do that, right? So I thought that I would go through some, and this isn't necessarily like back to school rituals like I was talking about before. I'm kind of just going to rant about some of the things that I've been doing to kind of prepare, because that's what helps me kind of like ground myself, right? So I make it a point not to like, I haven't made it a point in 10 years to like not go into school, but this summer, like I've kind of alluded to in earlier episodes, is like this is the first time that I've really taken a break from school, and I'm trying really hard not to go back and like do all the things all at once. So here's the first thing that I'm doing that I can do when I'm not in the building, because I need to do these things. So the first one, right, is like I'm genuinely just trying to enjoy like this last bit of summer, right? And that's the first thing I wrote on here about like what am I doing to prepare for the school year, is I'm really trying to like enjoy what free time I have left, right? Like in the next few months, right? Like in the next few weeks, next few months, whatever, is I'm going to be just so drained from all the things, right? And I know that I'm going to like value this time that I had to do nothing. So I'm trying really hard to like enjoy what I can, right? Like I've had a lot more free time this summer to like do the things that I want to do. Like I've been running a lot. I've been, playing video games a lot. I've been doing a lot of writing. I have like 3 books that I'm working on that I just like have this mass sense of inspiration for recently, right? Like one of them is about teaching, one of them is about me, and the other one is just like a completely different kind of like romantic-y kind of vibe that I'm going for. Because you know what? I've realized that I try to sit down and I read these like mass produced books, right, that are like getting a lot of attention. It's always like these romances, these like spicy novels that like all these adults are reading, and then it's like this romantasy genre that is just like totally taken over for some reason that I don't really understand. Like I'm trying really hard to get into it, like I really am. And I thought to be spiteful that like if I hate it so much, like why don't I just go and write one? And I'm actually like really fucking getting into it, which is the problem. Like writing it is actually super fun, and I don't do that like kind of writing a lot where it's not like about me or based on me or anything like that. It's literally just like a story. And I've always loved writing, but I've loved writing in the sense of like, you know, like personal narratives in the sense of like taking value of things in my own life, like reflection, like literary things. Like I've loved doing analytical writing and things like that. So like taking the time to sit down and do like genuine creative writing and like world building and like plot development is like something I'm not like used to in the sense, but I'm like super enjoying it. So in order to like enjoy the rest of my summer, right? That's like one of the things that I'm trying to do more is just like I'm trying to write, I'm trying to read, I'm trying to really soak in what is left of the summer for my hobbies, because I know that like in a month I will forget that I ever had hobbies in the first place. And I think that that's a huge piece of like what I need to do in order to go back to school is like I'm really really trying to like enjoy what's left, because if I don't, then I'm not going to remember what it felt like to have hobbies, and I'm not going to want to do it in a week, right? Like when school starts, like I'm not going to be like, okay, let's sit down and write, let's go for a run. Like I'm trying to get my body trained to recognize that I need these things and I'm thriving on these things, so that when school starts I can actually continue to enjoy them. That doesn't feel like an extra thing that I have to do. Does that make sense? Because I talk about this in therapy a lot. I need to stop bringing up therapy on this podcast. You guys probably think I'm so deeply troubled, and I am. So I guess that's fine. But I'm I'm trying really hard to, train my body to like understand that these are new habits I'm building, and I think enjoying that last piece of my summer really is for that, right? Where it's hey, I spent all summer like building these nice habits. Like I've been doing yoga, I've been running, I've been reading, I've been writing, I've been giving myself time to like exist as a person, and I really want that to continue in the year. So in order for me to prepare to go back to school, I'm really taking this like last week to, I think I have something planned every day this week of like, okay, whether it's like an appointment or like seeing people that I haven't gotten to see, or whether it's like writing or spending some time just like out and about, right? Like I'm trying very seriously to plan this last week of break meticulously to give myself time to enjoy all the things I still can, right? So yeah, I'm trying to fill up summer with the last bits of what I can to make sure that I still remember that I had time for it. So yeah, this like last week is really, it feels packed, but it feels packed with the things that are going to fill my cup that I can then use to prepare and like, bolster my defenses for the school year, because Lord knows it's going to be tough. I keep getting these emails, you guys, and it is not looking good. It's not looking good. So that's like the first thing. And I think like the other things that I do to prepare are a little bit different. Like I think I try really hard not to go immediately into the classroom. I think that's been my thing in the past, where it's like, okay, let's just go sit in the building and do stuff. I did go in, I think I went in a few days ago, and there was like a whole bunch of people there, and I looked like a scrub. Do you guys ever walk into the school building expecting not to see anybody, and then like everyone's there, but you're like scrubbed out and like your messy hair, like you're wearing a hat, like a hoodie, you like, are just grunged out, and you just see all these people and you're like, what the hell are you guys doing here? Like this is like me time. Like please don't come into this room. And I had to walk to the printer, and I like ended up talking to a bunch of people, and I'm just like, you guys, please don't look at me right now. Like I look like a rat. Like I look like a rat that just crawled out from like a cave of hibernation or something. So, I try really hard not to like go into the building all the time, just because one, it's like doesn't serve me in the same capacity. Like I don't know, when I'm there, my heart rate just like automatically increases. So what I do, and I have a list, like at the end of the school year, I think I talked about this before, at the end of the school year I like make a list of all the things that I want to do better at the beginning of next year. So I have had that list, and I've mostly avoided it until recently because we're getting back into school, but I have a list of all these different things, and a lot of these things are like systemic in like my own classroom and like what I want to do differently, right? So the first thing I kind of always plan is like what are my daily routines, like what do I want my classroom structure to look like, and from there I kind of like build up what the rest of the year looks like. I don't do day-to-day lesson planning so much. Like even when I was teaching a more general education class, like I wouldn't do that, and especially now in special ed, um what I do to prepare for the year is really build in those daily routines, that like classroom structure, right? So it's like I'm making, individual things and I'm planning those, and I don't have to be in the building to do that, right? Like I can plan out what my day-to-day schedules are and what the routines are for kids, and that's like always been the base for me to like build from, right? So when I'm starting talking about like working on things over the summer, I'm doing things that I don't have to be in the building to do, and I'm still preparing for all the things that will help me be successful when I get there. Because if I have a solid base of like, okay, here's what I want my routines to look like this year, here's what I want their like every 15 minutes to look like, and I have that base, then from there I can start planning like the lessons and the individual things, right? Like I can prep the materials. Right now, what I really try to do first is like plan those routines, because that's like the base of what a classroom has. And I think it took me a while in my career to like get to that point, because typically what I would do is I would immediately start lesson planning, and then I would be like, okay, but like how are we actually going to get there? Like I always had these like really big ideas, right, of like how I wanted to approach a certain topic, and I typically had like a curriculum or a guide that I had to follow in some way, of like, here are the 8 things that I have to include this year no matter what. Whether I worked at a core knowledge school, you guys, I think I've talked about that before. I haven't really ever stuck to us like a strict curriculum, and I know a lot of core teachers have that, but I never had that. So what I would typically do, like I said, is like get all these like really giant ideas about like, okay, when we read this book, I want to do all of these different things. When we're reading Call of the Wild, I want to like plan this. So I would really do it a lot more like unit by unit, but I didn't take the time necessarily like build in like those classroom routine structures, daily things early on in my career. And it took me a few years to kind of schedule that piece out. I think it was like somewhere around COVID, where that was my 4th or 5th year teaching, and I think that's a pretty good timeline. But once you hit COVID in your 4th or 5th year, you kind of like start over, because teaching after COVID has been crazy. You guys know that, you're teachers. We don't have to go down the COVID rabbit hole, right? So, but what really helps me now is like really planning those like daily routines and what my classroom is going to look like day to day, because then, like I said, from there you can like build up the lessons, you can build up all the cool shit that like is exciting, right? So what I need to do is, outside of the building, is I need to plan what my day to day is going to look like. I need to make sure that my daily check-ins are set, my warm-ups are structured in a way that I can present them to kids, like all of those sorts of things that are just like day-to-day things, right? And that's really what I'm trying to do, right? From there, it's like then I can start preparing the documents, right? So what I do after I like plan these like daily things is I start like preparing documents. This year, one of the things I'm doing, and I think I have a separate topic on here to talk about like what my new ideas are, but for my students that are on IEPs, I think the biggest thing that I can teach them is like a sense of like organization and a sense of structure, and then also like a sense of safety in my classroom, right? Where it's like, oh, where is that thing that I need? Oh, it's in Kassick's room. Or what am I supposed to be doing right now? It's like, oh, okay, we're just practicing, right? So in my classroom, in my special education classroom, and it's resource, it's not like severe student needs, and I know that's like a whole different issue in special education. I just like I'm not involved in that world, right? So I do a lot more of like the academic support, the social emotional in some ways, right? Because as a special education teacher, I think you naturally kind of fall into that anyway, which I've talked about before. But what I'm doing right now, and this is one thing that like is after I build those like routines in the classroom, right? I start like preparing the documents that I'm going to use, like the daily lessons, right? So this year, what I'm trying to do is for each student on my caseload and each student I have in class, which is basically a Venn diagram that is one giant circle, I am creating little binders for them that have like the daily warm-up page, that have like their weekly schedules to help them kind of keep straight things that are happening like in my classroom, so that they can hold themselves accountable to like the practice that they're doing. I'm really trying hard this year to emphasize that like this is maybe a special education thing in particular, but I try really hard to like find balance for these kids, right? Where it's like, I want them to have time to catch up on their homework, right? In other classes, and to give them the extra time to work on tests and quizzes and assignments. Like I want to do that, but I also want to make sure they understand that like my class is also meant for them to improve their skills and, bridge the gap between like where they are at and where their peers are at, right? So this year, what I'm doing is I'm creating little individual binders for each student that has like a page on the front of that they get to design, and they get to see all the things that are in there. Right when they open it is like their daily schedule. And then that'll have like, okay, here's what did you work on today? Please tell me. I like sign off on it. I'm hoping to have like individual conferences with each of them at least once a week. I promised that a bunch of times to them last year, and it just did not work because last year was rough. And that's all I'm going to say, because if you've been here for a while, you already know. So after that, they'll have, their daily schedule. And then after that, I forgot what's next, but their warm-ups, right? They'll have their daily warm-ups, which I'm going to do next year for them, which is just like skill building type things. And this is all going to be located in their binder. And then the important stuff after that is like, I'm going to page protect a place where all of their accommodations are listed, as well as their IEP goals. And I think this is often untalked about thing in special education. Like at least when I was in general education, like I never thought it was okay to tell kids that they have accommodations or that they need different things or they learn differently. To me, I like didn't know how to like have that conversation necessarily. Like I would, talk about equity a lot in classes when kids would ask like, oh, why do they get extra time? Why do they get such and such? Like I would talk about all of those different things, but I wouldn't necessarily know how to talk to the individual student receiving those things, right? So now as a special education teacher, my main goal is to make sure that like they feel safe and supported in the things that they need. So like day one, we talk about what their accommodations are. Day one, we talk about what my role is for them, and my role for them is to like advocate for them and be their support in the building when like they feel like they don't have anything or when they feel like they need somebody, right? Like so day one, right, in this binder, they'll have their accommodations, their IEP goals right behind it, so they know like what they're working towards. And that goes such a long way in like building the culture of a classroom, especially when like this, where they just struggle in general with life and education and learning and just different things, right? So in the binder, they're going to have all these things. They're going to have all these reminders. In the back, I'll have like a testing, like a testing score, like log that they can like log all their scores. They can kind of see their growth. And then there's a couple other things that are like classroom specific for me. A spot to like keep their journal. We're going to do some writing this year. And then a spot for them to like house all their like missing assignments, because Lord knows like week 2 we're gonna have just like a pile of shit in there. You guys know how it is. So that's like one of the things I'm trying this year, and that's like the big document that I'm preparing, right? Like in previous years when I was teaching general education, I think document preparation came a little bit later. Like I said, it's kind of about like what works for you and your energy and like your curriculum and things like that. But once I had like my daily routines down, then I would go and I would make all the lessons. I would plan the big units, and I wouldn't like print the things. Like I am not you guys, I am not the teacher that's going to sit and print everything out for the whole year or plan everything out for the year. Like kudos to teachers who can do that and like stick to it, because like that has never been my vibe. Like I can never do that. I typically write like a rough unit plan, and then I scope out like a schedule, but that schedule elongates itself all the damn time. Like I taught language arts, and we have a ton of shit to get through all the damn time, but I would never stick to that that beginning of the year unit plan or that beginning of the year like year-long plan. Like that would never happen. So love that for you guys if you can spend the first week of school just like printing and preparing everything for the year that you'll need. I never been for me. Love that for you. Never been for me. I am not that teacher. And I don't know if it's a type A, type B thing. It's just like not how my brain works. Like I don't do that. Congratulations to you though, for real. And I think the other like plug I have on here, right, is like I try really hard, and this is like an easy way for all of you guys to make money low key. I think that I've talked about teachers pay teachers on here before, and like how I low key don't agree with it. Are you okay? Sorry, my cat just like could not get, like he was trying to jump. You guys, I don't know if you heard it. Maybe I'll edit this out. I probably won't, because I think it's funny. Usually I lock my cat in like the bathroom or something because he'd be jumping all the time. But today I let him like stay out. So anyway, typically I forgot what I was talking about. Holy shit. I had to go back and listen to the recording. So this is like a jump cut for me. But I was talking about an easy way for like teachers to make money is literally just to upload things on Teachers Pay Teachers, right? And I've talked about that on this podcast before, about like my love and hate relationship with Teachers Pay Teachers. Typically around this time of year when I like start getting in the mindset of like really creative work and like planning lessons and stuff, is like I just like start uploading it to my store on Teachers Pay Teachers, right? Like there's a lot of stuff on there that I've used once or twice or a handful of times, but it really is just like a good opportunity for, if you guys are in that like creative zone at the beginning of the year, just like take a minute, upload a bunch of it into your Teachers Pay Teachers store. It's super easy. And then, every now and then you'll get a little email that says you sold a product on Teachers Pay Teachers. It really is that easy. Like I don't have a huge platform yet, but I've made, at least enough money for me to like want to go back to Teachers Pay Teachers, right? And yes, shameless plug, if you like want some stuff that's like, social emotional, there's a lot of language arts things, there's a few special education things on there, but my Teachers Pay Teachers is like linked everywhere that I have my link tree. So if you guys want some stuff, want to look around, please go and check that out, because one, I think it'll help you. And like low key, if you want to like message me and say that you are listening to the whole episode of the podcast and you want some free shit, like just email me. Like not email me, slide into my DMs, you guys, because I literally believe so much more in just like sharing materials than I do believe in like me getting money for it. And while I like getting money and stuff, like education shouldn't be like that. So I do have stuff, like if you want to go buy it, great. If you want to slide me a DM with something that you're interested in or something you heard on the podcast or whatever, like please just do that, because I would much rather you guys have a material that you want to use as opposed to something that you're like, oh shit, that would be like really cool, but I don't have the time to recreate it and I don't want to spend, $5 on it. And honestly, both are so valid. So like I said, if you find something that you like, please just like reach out. I'm more than happy to provide that, because like I said, we all should be sharing stuff anyway. And I already have a soapbox on that. So anyway, the link's in my bio. The other thing that I'm really trying to do this year is trying to create like a better like classroom environment. And I feel like that's something that I've like done pretty well in the past. Like I've never gotten any complaints other than like from fucking admin, but we've also been down that road before, and I don't want to bring that energy into like my complaints for today, because I already be complaining about that. So the other thing, I just saw this has been on my to-do list for like a long time, but I found this, I think it was on like TikTok or something somewhere, probably, that like inspired me for this idea. But it was very much of like classroom rules, but in the sense of like saying, instead of like, hey, be respectful, it's talking about like the phrase on the poster that I'm making is, it's like, you are too much of a good person to be disrespectful to your peers. Like, you are too much of a good learner to misorganize your materials, right? Like it's things like that that are more affirmative, that it like, and I know kids don't spend time, and like the kids in my room are not going to spend time reading these posters, but I think like the general vibe of pointing out to kids that they are too much good, like you are too empathetic to be disrespectful to your peers, like you are too respectful to yell at your teacher when you don't get your way. Like it's those things, right, that I think reframe a little bit of the classroom expectations to something positive. And I'm trying better. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be better about like just in general my own work, like positive affirmations for like myself, right? And I always think that it's like, if I had a teacher or if I had anybody in my life, right, that would actively feed me those things, like, actively speak to me in a positive manner that was like affirming, that it's like, hey, you're too smart to be doing it like this. You're too respectful to act like this, right? Like you're too much of a good person to exist in this way that's, abhorrent, to, for lack of better words, because I'm, getting into it right now. But I never really had that as a kid, right? Where someone was saying that it's like, you're too good, like you are a good kid, like you are a good person. And whether it's a sign on my door or like something that I'm saying, like I really want that to like be the vibe of my classroom this year, as opposed to just like, hey, come in, be respectful, like let's not use bad words. And it's just like I don't feel like classroom rules that way like work, and I'm trying really hard this year to like build that culture right off the bat, so that it's like we can then use that phrase, or I can point to that poster that says like, hey, you're too good of a person to be acting like this right now, can we please adjust? And I think that is the way that works for me. And I know that other teachers have like their different way of like, running a classroom and things like that. But I really want my classroom, when you walk in, to have the vibe of like, we're all in this together. It's hard and we're challenged and we're doing all these things. But at the end of the day, like you are a good person. And maybe that's like my big teacher flaw. I think maybe my biggest flaw as a teacher is I really think they're all good kids. And I've said that before to lots of rolling eyes. I've said that on the internet to comments that like piss me the fuck off. But I truly believe that like every kid that comes into my room is a good kid. And maybe that's naive of me, and I maybe have been proven wrong about that in the past. But I believe that like if we give them the chance to succeed, they will. And I really want, the things that I put up in my classroom to like have that energy, because that's like the best energy that I can put out, right? So see you guys, I'm already a little bit more calm than like when I started this. So anyway, I think like the last thing that I'm working on is as far as like new ideas and things that are coming up for me before school is like I am fortunately and unfortunately the head of my department next year, and that's like, and I could go on about how I low-key have been craving this for like a long time, because at my old school, like they never would have valued me enough or given me the state of mind or being to like exist in that role as like a leader in the building. So 11 years in and finally getting that opportunity is is it's great. For lack of better words, like it is a really like cool opportunity, and I'm thankful that I like get to do it. But it also adds like a different amount of pressure. I think the other thing is like I'm the head of the special education department, and this is only my third year in special education. Like I've been in education for a long time, and I know a lot about education, and I know about the inner workings of a lot of different things. But I think there's like this pressure to succeed in that role, and it's not that I'm doing it on my own. Like I have people I can rely on. Like I feel very supported by administration, and I feel very supported by like the team that I work with. But it is like that new thing that I'm right now what I'm doing, preparing new ideas, is like I'm trying to prepare new ideas to make sure that our team works together. And in most schools, especially in like every school I've worked in the special education department, like that is the biggest department. Like we have SSPs, we have IEP techs, we have paras, we have the teachers, we have all these different people that are like a part of our team. And to be the head of that it's kind of intimidating. I'm not going to lie. So I've been like planning new things for that, of just like how we're going to run meetings and what I want the vibe of the meetings to be, and how I'm going to invite general education teachers into this meeting, right? Because it's like, as the biggest department and as the department in the building that I think often gets othered, for lack of better words, like I've been in a lot of buildings where special education is kind of like off to the side and people like don't know how to address it, right? So one of my big things this year is I really want to create like space and opportunities for other teachers and other people in the building to like come in and interact with us and ask us questions about our kids and ask us questions about the IEP process, like almost like mini PLCs, but between like the special ed teacher and the general education teacher, because like we don't often get that opportunity, right? It's very much, in my experience, it has been, and I worked to bridge this gap a little bit last year, but with all the like legalities and like intensities of special education, like even in some ways, like our general education teachers like don't always know how to interact with these kids, and I feel like that is just such a, like, I want to fix that, right? So as the person that's going to be theoretically in charge of the department next year, and I use that term so very loosely because I don't want all that pressure all the time, right? But I think being the person that is like the head of the department and the voice and like the figurehead, for lack of better words, like I really want to make sure that I'm doing things to like bridge the gap. So I have this idea of like, it came from like my counseling work actually, where they had like this idea for like coffee with the counselor, where once a month or every other week or something like that, is they would invite like community members from outside of the, like parents and anyone else who wanted to be invited, like to come and see what's going on in the counseling office. And I really want that to be the energy for the special education team, right? Like I want teachers to come and talk to us. Like I want them to more understand the special education process. I want us to have an open door policy so that when frustrations come up, because frustrations always come up, like I said, with IEP meetings, with like the legalities of it, with like just the general challenge that I think working with students who learn differently entail, I think it's better to have an open door policy where collaboration is normalized, because I've complained about it on this podcast before, where a bunch of times last year I felt like that communication was just like walled off, and I have fault in that, right? Just as much as everyone else does. Like communication is a two-way street, but I really want to try this year to like not let that shit bog me down, because I really want to make sure that like it is an open door, that we can communicate about those things, that we can, that I can lead a department that is in its own way like open to those conversations, right? And I think it starts with the leadership and it like trickles down. So I have also talked about it on this podcast before like 100 times about like how to advocate through your department head, and I really want to make sure that like I am what I preach, because given this opportunity, like I'm not gonna just say like, okay guys, like I'm running the meetings, like that's kind of all. I want to take on that role, right? So as I'm preparing to like go to back to school, and as I'm preparing like new ideas, it's also new ideas on like, how do I want my department to look? How do I want to exist in a space where I am the leader that people can go to, and that I'm not like, pushed off? And it is a challenge for me, right? Like given just like my challenges in general, like with social interaction, and like I often like retreat a little bit. I think, having autism makes it hard to do a lot of those things, but I'm trying to put in systems to alleviate some of that challenge for me, right? And I think being the head of the department kind of opens up that opportunity for me to grow, and I think that alone by itself, that's redundant, that by itself kind of speaks to the energy I'm hoping to bridge, right? Like there is a sense of vulnerability in like being a leader that I have kind of strayed away from in the past. And as I prepare to like go back to school, it's like creating new opportunities for me to challenge myself and for my team to like be involved in new ways and all of those different things. So that is something that's like on my list for the new ideas that I'm like planning for this upcoming year. And I think that's like those are like the big ones right now that I'm thinking of as far as new ideas. Like I feel like I have a bunch, and I know that there's going to be more as I like, really get into the stuff that I'm doing, and as we get into all those new meetings and stuff like that. But the other things that like for back to school is there's a lot of anxiety, right? Like I think as a special education teacher, I feel like a lot of anxiety for my parents and the students that are coming back, because the parents, they work with kids who generally struggle with school. And I think I have in the past like few weeks received a handful of emails just from parents just being like, okay, like what's the vibe this year? Can I see a schedule? Like what are we doing? And again, in creating like that boundary for myself, I'm trying really hard not to engage in a way that pushes me too much to like start working early, because like I'm not getting paid for it right now. Like I just want everyone to understand that like in the summer, like even if I respond to an email, like I'm not getting paid for that. Like I'm not getting paid for that. Like summer is for me. And even when the parents are coming in and they're communicating about meetings and they're, curious about like what the year looks like I am appeasing that, because I know there was like some drama on here, not on TikTok, not too long ago, about like having an IEP meeting over the summer. And maybe this is a hot take. If there was a valid need to do that, and if there was a genuine concern about returning, and the previous IEP meeting was far enough back, like there are certain circumstances where I would 100% have an IEP meeting in the summer, right? Generally, no. Like, don't fucking work over the summer. We can have the IEP meeting when you get back. Like, generally speaking, absolutely not. But in the perfect storm of circumstance where it makes sense to do that and it qualifies to do that, and for the student it makes the most sense, like all of those things, a perfect storm of like would make that okay to have an IEP meeting over the summer, right? But I'm trying really hard as these emails come in, as these anxieties for parents come in, and as the anxieties for students like start heightening, right? Like we have a week until they're back, and all of a sudden we're like back into this new routine, we're back into this work, right? And so it is a goal for me to, as a case manager for 30 plus kids and their education, to like make sure I am available, but also like protecting my time, right? So as I'm complaining about going back to school and thinking about going back to school, it's also about making sure that like my kids and my parents are also ready to go back to school. And sometimes that means sending an email or two, or appeasing some of those anxieties initially, and I'm okay with that. And it's also okay if you're not okay with that, right? Like protect your time. And I think that's like the controversial part, right? Where it's like there are some teachers who are willing to do it, so then suddenly that makes it so every teacher has to do it. And I don't know. I think it's a slippery slope either way, right? Where it's like we say absolutely not, or we say absolutely yes, and either way something is going to change and something has to change. And I don't really know what that is, right? But it's the idea of like I'm trying to protect my time while also protecting the role in education, in educating and protecting and advocating for these students that I can. And that's something that's come up more recently as we go back to school, and something that I'm like, balancing on my own, where it's like, do I respond to this email right now? Do I wait? Do I just say like, hey, contact me in a couple weeks? Or do I like go full head and go into it, right? Like there's a whole bunch of different nuances there that I just, as we think about going back to school, it is different. And it's different in this role than it has been for me in other roles, because when I was a general education teacher, like I wouldn't get a lot of emails from parents generally. I would get more emails about like coaching and things like that, but I generally wouldn't get emails about like, hey, what are you teaching this year? Like, what is the curriculum for language arts? And I wouldn't get emails like that, right? Like as a special education teacher, I get a lot more emails about like their individual students and concerns that way, and like what does the year look like, what's the schedule like I get that, and there's just a difference, right? And I'm not saying that special education is harder in any capacity. Like that's not an argument that I'm here to have. It's just different. And one of the big things that I work on this year is, well, that I work on like during the summer, is I get a ton of ideas, right? Like throughout the summer I am like, my brain just like constantly, it sits and it settles, and then it's like, okay, you have an idea for school, or you watch like a TikTok, or you are watching a movie and you have a really good idea for something, right? Like even watching The Odyssey recently, I was like, oh my God, this would be such a cool lesson for language arts, right? And I try really hard not to like immediately jump in because I'm trying again to protect my summer. But the one thing that I do that like really helps me manage like my time, especially when I get back to the building and really get back on, contract time and back into the school vibe, is I just like put it on a to-do list. Like I have in Google, they have like the tasks sidebar, and I use that all the time. Like when I have an idea, I write it down on there. It's like, okay, think about this. And so it's like, one, it's out of my brain, and then two, it's somewhere where I can deal with it later. That like helps me when I'm back into school mode, because I'm like not always in school mode, right? So I try to like add everything that I'm thinking about, like even in the things I've already talked about in this episode, right? Is like I put those on my to-do list. Like I just added something to my to-do list right before I started this, of like sending out an email to all the parents on my caseload that says like, hey, if you want to have a back to school meeting, like please schedule it with me, right? And that's not something I'm doing right now because I'm like not in the mode to do that. Right now I'm in the mode to like creatively plan and like, do those routines and like get those things settled, because the next piece, right, of like what happens when I get back to school is that even if I have like all of these things planned, and even if I have my to-do list like ready to go, what always happens, and I alluded to this in the beginning, right, is like my time always gets eaten up in those like first few days back. It's always like the small talk and the talking to your friends, and it's like the sitting in the lounge, and it's like the meetings that we're supposed to be in, and it's like the new team meetings, and it's the trainings, and it's like all those things, right? Like I have to get something done before school starts, because if I go in just on contract time and I start my giant ass to-do list that I've been building all summer and thinking about all summer, and like know that I'm going to have to do just based on back to school stuff, like I'm never going to get that shit done if I don't get some of it done now. So a lot of the things that I do when I go back to school is I try, spatially, and I tried, like I said, on Monday, I like went into the building to see what my classroom is like, to unpack some stuff, and that kind of stuff has to happen early, because if it doesn't happen early, like it's not getting done unless I stay way late after school, and I'm not doing that shit. Like I've passed that. Like this is my 11th year, you guys. Like I am so over some of this stuff, and I love my job. Otherwise I like wouldn't be going back, right? But it's like 11 years in, you really start learning some stuff about just like what takes precedence, and it happens like very naturally. Something that when I was student teaching, I had my host teacher, he explained to me that education was like kind of like driving a car. Okay. And I don't know if I've talked about this metaphor on this podcast before, but I was explaining it recently, where it's something that like came up. My host teacher, when I was student teaching, he basically said, he's like, hey, you have a lot of like really good stuff going. You're nowhere near perfect because you're a student teacher. Like you're not good yet. Like let me make sure that part is super clear. Like you are not a good teacher yet. But he said like you have the framework for a lot of these things. What you're doing is you're like really just thinking about every step as it's happening, right? And he equated that to like when you're driving a car. When you're learning how to drive a car, right? You're worried about like where your hands are on the wheel. You're worried about how hard you're pressing the brake. You're worried about what's happening on your side mirrors. You're constantly adjusting to see like what's happening behind you. You don't know where your windshield wipers are, so every time it starts raining you have to like look to make sure you know where they are, and you're thinking about every individual step of like driving the car as you're driving it. And once you get better at driving, all of that stuff is just like second nature. You don't have to think about where to put the key in. You don't have to think about where the gear shift is. You don't have to think about what's happening in your rearview mirror. You don't have to think about where your hands are on the wheel. You don't have to think about how hard to press the gas or how hard to press the brake, right? It just like happens so naturally. And he equated that to like your first few years of teaching. He said, when you're beginning teaching, you really are thinking about each step and decision as you're making it. You're literally thinking about like the question you're going to ask next. You're thinking about the correct answer. You're thinking about what page of the text you're on. You're thinking about how you're walking around the classroom. You're thinking about what's projected on the screen. You're thinking about the assignment they're doing and what they're working on. And it's not naturalized yet. Like it's not ingrained in your muscle memory yet, right? But as you get into teaching, like he told me like 5 years, and for me obviously it was a little bit different just because I already said that. And he said like once you get more into it, it's all of those little actions become so ingrained in like who you are as a teacher. It's like this muscle memory response where you can walk into a classroom and you can just do it. And it's like driving, right? Eventually we don't think about all those things. And in teaching, we eventually don't think about every single step we're taking and every single action we're taking in the classroom. It just starts happening so naturally, right? And that's something that as I get farther into my career, it's like this back to school piece, right? It's like all of this stuff that I know that I have to do back to school, like I know how to do it. It's literally been ingrained in me for 10 years, right? And I think on that note, I wrote down something at the beginning that I was talking about that says, it just says IEP meetings, you guys. And I wrote that down at the beginning because I was like, oh, I'll get into that later. And I completely forgot. And I could go back and listen to my recording and I could remember what that idea was. But I've already talked for 40 minutes somehow. So I think with that, I'm going to end it. This is, like I said, my last episode of the summer. I'm going to try really hard to continue putting out episodes. I think the thing that's really clicking with me is, like I said this in my early episodes of the summer, where I was like, it will be hopefully easier for me to plan some time because I was already going to classes every like Wednesday night or something. Like I already had an hour and a half of my time blocked off. So what I'm going to do is I'm really going to like schedule some time to like really get into it. Like I have some ideas for what I want to do on my podcast, and I think this idea has been like staring at me for a long time, and I have some guests lined up that I've like kind of ghosted for right now because I've like I said, I've been enjoying summer. I've been like, in and out of depressive episodes. So I've just kind of disconnected from like the new idea generation part and like the really planning part. Right. But I have some guests lined up that are, that have reached out to me through different avenues. Some of them are like personal guests, things like that. But my next idea is really like, I keep thinking about the idea of like getting published. Right. I think the hard part for me in all of this content creation thing, and I think the hard part for me in like this creative avenue and like this outlet that I'm building is that the reason I started all of this was so that I could start writing and I could publish and I could spread knowledge and experience and words that way. Like my whole goal in all of this is like to get published, right? And I have a book written, I'm working on a couple more, and after like 4, 5, 6 pages of rejections that I've documented for whatever reason because I hate myself. It's just, I'm starting to realize that it's like, I can just start sharing it. So a thing I want to start doing on this podcast is something related to like the first book the teaching book that I've, been sitting on for a while, that like kind of is like this passion project of mine, and it has been for a while, that I'm going to start talking about like individual student stories. My idea for my book for so long has been like creating plot-driven narratives of, narrative nonfiction of students that I've had in my past, right? And I entered a really good bookend when I like quit my job of 8 years, right? Where I have like all these stories like already written down about, students over the years, right? Where it's like I meet them in 7th grade and then they pop back up again in 9th grade and 10th grade, 11th grade. And then, we're getting coffee when they graduate from college. And the book idea I have there is really to just like craft that narrative of like the relationships you can build in education and the relationships you can build in teaching and that kind of process, right? So my book really is separated into like years, but you'll see like the recurring characters, like all the names are, scratched out, obviously redacted and changed for security and privacy and all those things. But the idea there would be to like, I know this kid in 7th grade, but then I also get to know him when he's 16 and 17 and when he's also, 22 and graduating college. And I don't know of any other books that are out there doing that. So in my podcast, hopefully coming up soon, I'm going to like figure out a way that I can discuss some of those stories in a way that like feels meaningful, because if it's the first time that somebody hears a story from my book, but also a story of like someone that's like not me, I really want to make sure I like honor that, right? And a lot of the stories are not heavily fictionalized, but they are fictionalized in the way that it's like I'm building them as a character, and they're definitely based on like super like deep moments that we've had in the classroom, or super important moments that we've had in the classroom, and milestones that we've had in the classroom, but fictionalized in a way that like makes it plot driven and conflict driven, in a way that kind of tells the story of like what a teacher can do. But like more than that, it's also like the crux of this, right, is that everyone I've shared this book with, right, and everyone that I've talked to about these stories, it's like, bro, this book is like about you. And I think it's a really introspective look at like what teaching does to the teacher and like the impact that these relationships have on the teacher, right? Because it's like, I think in education we talk a lot about how we impact the kids, and we talk about how like teaching matters every day because we're making such a big difference, and we see and hear those stories all the time. But I think there's another side of it too, where it's like, okay, yes, I am changing them, I am changing the world, I am impacting lives, but it's also like every student that has come into my room has also changed me. And that's something that I want this book to do and say and communicate and advocate for about education, is it's like the whole thing is just so impactful in the way that like we view and understand society and each other. And I think that on this podcast, I really want to start sharing more of those stories because they're already there, and I'm tired of getting rejected. So I'm just going to force the 8 of you that listen to this to listen to the stories that I've written. And on that note, I guess this is my sign-off moment. Please follow me on all my social medias. It's linked in my linktree. It's linked in the description of this podcast. It's linked on all my accounts that are public. So please go and follow those. If you want to support the podcast in a different way, you can buy me a coffee. There is some links in there that will allow you to kind of support a little bit monetarily. If you have some extra money and support and feel charitable, I also have a classroom wish list posted on all of my social medias that will, give you some access and experience to support some of the students I work with, and also me, because I'm a part of that too, right? Like, I matter too. So all of that said, thank you so much for listening to this whole thing. Really appreciate you if you stuck around, if you've listened to 1 episode or 10 episodes or however many episodes. Is this 26? Girl, I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm super proud of you, and I hope to see you in the next one. Okay, see you later. Bye. See you later.